Hi, this is Chitra, and you're listening to Hello Educator. October 4th to October 10th of 2020 is being observed as World Space Week. One of the highlights is that the planet Mars will be visible to the naked eye, and we are going to be fortunate to witness a rare celestial configuration. In today's episode, Obuli Chandran talks about Mars Opposition 2020 and what this phenomenon is really about.
Hi, Mango Science radio listeners, Obuli Chandran here. It's been quite some time since I got to record an episode for Science Radio, but I'm glad to be back again. So this week I'm going to be talking about an interesting celestial phenomenon that is going on right now, which you can look up at the night sky. So yes, if you've been listening to the news, you must be knowing it. I'm talking about the closest approach of the planet Mars. So if you've been not knowing it also, you might have been observing it without being aware of it. Evening after sunset, about a half an hour to 1 hour after sunset, if you look at the east direction, you will be seeing a very bright red point of light, a dot that does not look twinkling at all. So that is the planet Mars. The reddish glow is obvious even when you look at it. You don't have to look at through a binoculars or a telescope. By just with the naked eye, you will observe that it is very bright and red in color. So that is not quite often that you get to see it, Mars being so bright in the sky. So we call it the closest approach. So just like it's easy to understand that when an object is much closer to you, that object appears more brighter. The farther away it is, it appears much fainter. Because of the way the orbits are, like of the Earth and the Mars, both the orbits of Earth and the Mars are both elliptical. So sometimes they get closer to the sun, sometimes they get farther away from the sun in their orbit around the sun. And also the fact that Earth moves faster in its orbit around the sun than the Mars, because Mars is further away from the sun. So every 17 months or 18 months or 2.5 years or so, we overtake Mars in our orbit. So whenever we do that, so it's like we move in our orbit around the sun, and when we are about to overtake the orbit of Mars, it appears like the Mars is going to get closer and closer to us. Okay, and also adding on to this fact that we are overtaking the orbit of Mars every fixed frequency of time, like say 2 years and few months, the Mars is also moving in its orbit around the sun, elliptical. So sometimes it gets closer to the sun, sometimes it gets farther away from the sun. So depending on whether the Mars is closer to the sun or farther away from the sun, when we overtake it, it can appear more brighter or less brighter from our point of view. So this is an interesting thing. So because the closest approach happened in 2018, okay, when it was only about 38 million miles, if I'm not wrong. So that the closest approach happened on July 31st, 2018. Now we are again we are close to about 2 years and few months, like we are at October 6th, 2020, where we are having another close encounter with Mars, this time only about 41 million miles, little farther than the previous time, but still close enough for the planet to be extremely bright, visible extremely bright. Now as we move further, as the years go by, the closest approach is going to get wider and wider. The Mars is going to get wider and wider next time, each time when we overtake next time. So again, this is a cycle. Again, the Mars is going to come back closer to us, but it's not going to happen until 2035, where it's going to get almost as close as it did in 2018. So this would be the best time for you to observe Mars. And if you have a binocular or a telescope, even a small telescope, let's say a 70 mm or a 90 mm telescope, or bigger than that, you will be able to see the surface feature on Mars, like the mountainous terrains. If you have quite a big telescope, you can see the ice caps on the Mars, just like how we have Antarctica and Arctic regions on Earth that are largely made of ice. You will have similar things that you call them polar ice caps, that you can see them on Mars as well. But this is not something that observe it every day or every week. Let's say a couple of years, of 3 to 4 years from now, or some other months, few other months later, like when the Earth has moved away from Mars, the Mars is going to become smaller in size from our point of view and also less brighter. So when that happens, you won't be able to see these features. So this would be the best time to see the Mars planet. So that is the interesting thing that is going on. And there are a couple of words that you should be clear about, or not particularly clear about, but you should know the distinction between. One is the date of closest approach, and then you have the date of opposition. Okay, so date of closest approach is October 6th. So by the time you are listening to this episode, the date of closest approach is already passed. But the opposition, that is when Mars and Sun are exactly on the opposite side of the Earth. Okay, Earth is in the middle and Sun and Mars are on the opposite side on either side of the Earth. That you call it the opposition. It's on the opposite sides. So that is happening on October 13th. So there is a reason the way the orbits are positioned, whether the planet Mars is moving towards the Sun or whether the planet is moving away from the Sun during the overtake, will decide the closest approach day and the opposition day. So there are chances that opposition day and the closest approach day will coincide, but not always, not necessarily. This time, for example, there is a week gap between the closest approach and the opposition date. So that anyway, the opposition is going to happen on October 13th. So you are very well placed to observe the opposition. So since this is going to reach you on October 8th or 9th, you still have few days left before you can observe the Mars opposition. And do not worry, a few days difference is not going to bring in a drastic change in the brightness of the planet. For example, the planet is not going to be only as bright as it was like a couple of days ago for the next coming few weeks. So it's only after 3 weeks or 4 weeks or a month or 2, the brightness of the planet in the night sky is going to decrease significantly. So for the next few weeks, the brightness is not going to change much. So you're well positioned to observe it. The reason I'm saying this is because you don't have to feel bad that the day of closest approach is already passed, like October 6th. The planet is going to be still as bright as it was on October 6th for the coming few weeks. And also, we are in the monsoon time, so the rains are there, so it's going to be cloudy. So not every single day you're going to get a good observing conditions. The clouds are going to block. So don't worry about that as well, because the next 1 or 2 weeks, 1 or 2 days at least, you will be lucky to have a very clear sky, so you'll be observing the planet Mars. So if you have binoculars, it is really good. You can see the color even more brighter. And of course, if you have a telescope, please do not miss looking at the planet using a telescope. This is the best time to observe the planet, because the surface features, like I told you earlier, are going to be visible. So I'll catch you again with some other interesting piece of information that is happening in the world of science, or some interesting piece of information from the history, or talking about some facts and people. So until then, catch you again in another episode. Goodbye from Obuli here for Mango Science Radio listeners.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. To receive your daily dose of science stories, don't forget to subscribe to Mango Science Radio. We welcome stories from across the globe, so if you're a science enthusiast and would like to contribute to Mango Science Radio, please WhatsApp us at 99522 43541. Your feedback is valuable and keeps us motivated, so feel free to share your views in the form of an audio message on WhatsApp. Thank you so much for listening to Hello Educator. Remember to tune in for the next episode.